What kind of family tells a prince, "Don't come back," on the eve of the king's birthday parade? Prince Harry's quiet request to stay at Kensington Palace for just a few days has been flat-out rejected by Prince William and Kate Middleton, marking a chilling new chapter in this royal breakdown. As insiders reveal, Kate no longer feels emotionally safe with Harry nearby. The palace fears Meghan Markle could crash the event uninvited, setting off another media storm. In this video, we uncover what really happened behind the scenes, why Harry's presence is now seen as a threat, and how this one rejection could permanently destroy any hope of royal reconciliation. Continue. Please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It began with a message. Cold, decisive, and brutally clear. Don't come back. It wasn't whispered behind closed palace doors. It wasn't delivered through royal aides or buried in ambiguous statements issued from Buckingham Palace press offices. It was, according to insiders, the words spoken or made unmissably clear by Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, directly or through their closest circle, to Prince Harry. After months of speculation, strained silences, and failed back-channel talks, Harry had made what some in royal circles believed to be a desperate reach across the chasm. A simple request, at least on the surface. He wanted a temporary place to stay. Somewhere safe. Somewhere close to his former life. Kensington Palace. The very place where he once roamed the halls freely. A place once filled with the laughter of two brothers bonded by grief, before time, fame, and a woman named Meghan Markle changed everything. But the answer was unrelenting. No, not now. Not ever. What would drive Prince William and Princess Kate to slam the doors of their royal residence shut to Harry, just days before one of the most significant events on the royal calendar, trooping to color, the birthday celebration of King Charles? Was it fear? Was it betrayal? Or was it simply a breaking point finally reached after years of watching carefully planned royal moments turned into viral spectacles? For Prince Harry, the denial was more than just about lodging. It was a statement. It was a sign that no matter how long he wears the Duke of Sussex title, no matter how many headlines mention his name, he is no longer considered one of them. Not anymore. And certainly not around Kensington. Sources close to the palace say it was Kate who stood firmest. She doesn't feel safe, one insider revealed, referring not to a physical threat, but the emotional and psychological toll that any proximity to Meghan Markle brings. The fear, the leaks, the chaos, and worst of all, the staged moments that look private but are curated for maximum public fallout. According to those close to the Wales household, there was a genuine concern that Meghan could appear uninvited, as she's allegedly done before in more private settings. The implication wasn't that Meghan would march through the gates of Kensington unannounced, but that she would find a way to make her presence felt. Whether through paparazzi accidents, strategic Netflix shots, or messages dropped into press stories hours after Harry's arrival. They fear another staged moment, said one royal correspondent with deep connections at the palace. Another supposed off-camera photo op that winds up on a documentary. Another confidential family chat that mysteriously finds its way into a memoir, an interview, or a Netflix episode. For Kate, sources say, the concern goes deeper than the headlines. It's personal. Very personal. She remembers the tears. The confrontation before her wedding. The infamous fallout that was later reinterpreted and retold on American television by Meghan Markle herself. Kate was once the unbreakable pillar of calm in the monarchy, but after years of sustained pressure, the constant specter of Meghan hovering over every royal moment, and the fear of private life being exploited for clicks, she's done with being diplomatic. This isn't about forgiveness, one senior figure reportedly said. This is about survival. Kate is protecting her children, her reputation, her peace of mind. And Prince William? His reaction was less emotional, but no less final. He sees the chessboard, not just the pieces. And to him, Harry has become a liability. Not intentionally destructive, but predictably destabilizing. Wherever Harry goes, so do the cameras, the headlines, the narratives shaped by a different media machine. A machine no longer under royal control. For years, William tried. He opened doors, made allowances, hoped that his brother would find a way to balance his love for Meghan with his duty to the crown. But now, in the shadow of their father's fragile health and amid an increasingly divided royal future, William can't risk distractions. So when Harry inquired about staying in one of the royal apartments, rooms he once called home, the answer wasn't just no. It was, don't come back. That's the state of the royal family today. Fractured, suspicious, fragile beneath the regal smiles. Harry, once the cheeky younger brother, now finds himself knocking on locked gates. The irony couldn't be starker. The man who once had keys to the kingdom now can't even get a room. And still, he tries. Sources say Harry hoped his presence at Trooping the Colour would be seen as a gesture of goodwill. That even amid all the bitterness and tabloid flames, his respect for his father and the crown would open a pathway forward. But what he didn't account for was just how deep the wounds run in Kensington. For Kate, it's not just about the monarchy anymore. It's about what Meghan represents. Not just a person, but a force. A disruption. A constant risk. Imagine being in her shoes. Every time Harry returns, every conversation or casual glance risks becoming international news. Every interaction could be taken out of context, dissected on morning shows, and spun into a narrative that paints her as cold, distant, or worse. Kate has had enough. Behind palace walls, the phrase "never complain, never explain" still lingers, but it's under siege. Because in the age of streaming deals and ghost-written tell-alls, silence has become ammunition. And Kate knows it. That's why insiders say she was insistent. Kensington would not be a revolving door. Not this time. Not with the world watching. Not with the possibility that a single misplaced word might end up broadcast in another documentary. Not with the memory of how the last reunion, after Prince Philip's funeral, turned into another wound when Meghan and Harry later spoke of royal tensions in Oprah's garden. So here we are, days before Trooping the Colour, with the royal family's most famous outsider stuck on the outside once more. Still hoping for a way back in. Still navigating a family that doesn't know what to do with him and doesn't trust who he brings with him. The symbolism couldn't be more dramatic. The trooping will go on. The military uniforms will shine. The balcony will fill with smiling faces. But one face will be missing. And now, we know it's not an accident. It's a decision. A choice. A royal boundary drawn in stone. And for Harry, it might be the clearest message yet. When the door closes in Kensington, it stays closed. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore. Prince Harry's request to stay at Kensington Palace may seem like a logistical issue on the surface. Just a duke asking for a place to rest his head while in town for a national event. But behind this seemingly simple appeal lies a desperate attempt at reconnection, a subtle plea for inclusion, and a layered struggle with identity, belonging, and public perception. This was not about accommodations. This was about significance. About a prince trying to anchor himself once again to a home that no longer welcomes him. Why now? Why did Harry reach out for this visit? To attend King Charles's Trooping the Colour in London? For many observers, the answer lies in a mix of motivations, some political, some emotional, and some reputational. First, there is the undeniable pressure from public scrutiny. Harry's image in the United Kingdom has suffered a steep decline since his departure from royal life and the multiple public revelations that followed. From the Oprah interview to the Netflix docuseries to his memoir Spare, the British public has become sharply divided over his role in the monarchy's recent turbulence. With each appearance on foreign media or each revealing anecdote about his family, Harry has moved further away from the hearts of many who once adored him. Trooping the Colour represented a rare chance, a national moment where the eyes of the world are already fixed on the monarchy for him to demonstrate a willingness to be present, respectful, and supportive of the institution that once defined him. Then there's King Charles himself. Despite the mounting tension between Harry and the rest of the royal family, the father-son bond remains a central emotional thread. Sources close to the palace suggest that Harry still harbors hope of salvaging his relationship with Charles. Attending Trooping the Colour wouldn't just be a nod to royal protocol. It would be a symbolic show of support for a monarch who, despite his own complicated role in the family drama, has maintained a certain neutrality, or at least a carefully crafted public silence. But perhaps more pressing than either public image or fatherly ties is the emotional gravity of place. Kensington Palace is not just another building on the royal estate. It is where Harry and William lived together under Diana's watchful eye. It is the palace of childhood memories, late-night conversations, laughter shared in privacy away from the press. It was the last place where their relationship existed in its unbroken form. Requesting to stay there wasn't just about proximity to trooping the color. It was a reach for familiarity, for grounding, for a reminder of who he used to be. To understand the gravity of Harry's request, one must consider what Kensington means to him. As boys, William and Harry were raised under the protective shadow of that historic palace. They watched their mother come and go through those iron gates. They learned about the world and the weight of duty from within its corridors. After Diana's death, the palace remained a painful yet comforting tie to her legacy. Even after William and Kate moved into apartment 1A, and Harry was given Nottingham Cottage on the grounds, there remained a feeling of shared space, shared memory, shared identity. But that was before Meghan, before the rupture. When Harry and Meghan left the United Kingdom and stepped back from royal duties, their departure wasn't just about geography or title. It was a conscious, strategic, and emotional severing of ties. The couple's choice to settle in Montecito, California, to forge a new life defined by autonomy and independence, came at the cost of access to the institutions they once represented. And now, years later, Kensington feels less like a childhood home and more like a sealed vault, one whose access codes have long since been changed. Still, Harry's decision to return, even if temporarily, hints at a deeper internal conflict. For all his criticism of the royal machine, there remains a part of him that seeks its approval. For all his denouncement of media manipulation, there remains a prince raised in a world where presence matters, and absence is seen as defiance. In attending Trooping the Color, Harry would not just be showing up to support his father, he would be making a statement that despite all that's happened, he still sees himself as a member of the family, however distant or misunderstood. There's also the matter of appearances. In recent months, Harry has faced mounting pressure to clarify his standing within the family. Questions about his U.S. visa status, ongoing legal battles, and public gaffes have chipped away at the once princely image he carried across the Atlantic. Participating in a royal event like Trooping the Color, an event of grandeur, ceremony, and national pride, would have allowed him a moment of recalibration, a moment to say, I'm still here. I'm still part of this. But Harry's overture wasn't just about himself. Some insiders claim he hoped his return, even if brief, could signal the beginning of a thaw in relations, that his presence might soften the cold distance that has grown between the brothers, that seeing him in person, away from Netflix crews or book publishers, might remind William of the bond they once had. That hope, however, was extinguished with three simple realities: the refusal, the timing, and the silence. The refusal to let him stay within palace grounds was more than just a logistical denial. It was a border being drawn, a physical manifestation of the emotional and institutional distance that now defines Harry's role in the royal family. No guest room, no corner cottage, no safe haven, not even for a few days. The timing of the rejection couldn't have been more pointed. Just before a highly publicized royal event, when even the smallest inclusion could have carried symbolic power. Instead, the message was clear: his presence is not wanted here. Not while the cameras roll. Not while the monarchy parades itself as unified and strong. And then, the silence. Perhaps the most haunting response of all. No explanation was given. No counteroffer of an alternate location. Just a denial that echoed across the palace gates and into the headlines. What must it feel like to be Harry in that moment? To reach out, however cautiously, and be told, explicitly or not, that you are no longer welcome in your own history? One can imagine the impact on him. The internal questioning. The emotional weight of being a son without a place, a brother without access. The knowledge that even his father's celebratory parade could not create space for reconciliation. And for those watching from the outside, the question lingers: was this a missed opportunity? Could a simple gesture, letting Harry stay, even discreetly, have paved the way for healing? Or would it have reignited old wounds, stirred up media frenzy, and once again turned a royal event into a three-ring circus? The truth is likely somewhere in between. But for now, Harry's ask remains a frozen plea in the palace archives. A moment that might have been. A gesture denied. He wanted in. Not just into a room, but into a moment of royal life that he once called his own. And now he knows, at least for this year, for this King's Parade, and for this royal chapter, there is no space for him in Kensington. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore. In the annals of royal history, rejection often comes cloaked in formality, delivered by aides, softened by press releases, or buried beneath layers of protocol. But in Prince Harry's case, this rejection was felt with a sting that couldn't be dulled by distance or decorum. He wasn't denied a title. He wasn't stripped of a ceremonial honor. He was refused something far more personal, the right to simply stay in a place he once called home. Kensington Palace isn't just a building. It's where Harry learned to ride a bike, where he played with William in the gardens while their mother, Diana, tried to shield them from a world waiting to devour them whole. It's where he laughed, cried, and grew. It's where he mourned Diana after her death. That red brick palace had always been a part of him. To ask for a place inside its walls, even temporarily, was to seek comfort and familiarity. And when the answer came back a resounding no, it wasn't just a denial, it was a symbolic exile. Palace insiders say Harry initially made the request weeks before the King's birthday parade, believing that his attendance would help signal a softening of tensions. According to one source close to the Sussex camp, Harry had hoped to stay in one of the vacant royal apartments or even be offered a guest room inside one of the royal residences. Something discreet, away from the cameras. His goal, it was said, was not to stir headlines, but to quietly take part in the royal moment and support his father. But the response was firm, swift, and final. Not only was his request denied, but it was made clear, perhaps for the first time without ambiguity, that no living space within Kensington would be made available to him. No spare room. No guest wing. Not even Nottingham Cottage, the modest residence he once lived in with Meghan during the early days of their marriage. Every option was shut. Why? The explanation wasn't spelled out in official terms, but the whispers across the palace were loud enough. Kensington, now firmly under the household and influence of Prince William and Princess Kate, was no longer neutral ground. It was their domain, and they weren't willing to risk its sanctity or peace. This wasn't about pettiness. It was about boundaries. William, who for years tried to balance his public role with private loyalty to his brother, had come to view Harry's visits as disruptions. Not intentionally malicious, perhaps, but inevitably chaotic. Every visit brought media speculation, bodyguards, paparazzi, and the looming specter of Meghan Markle's presence, even if only in theory. The family had learned that even when Harry came alone, the noise followed. And then there's the matter of the press. William and Kate have worked tirelessly to protect their children from the glare of public intrusion. Kensington is not just their home, it's their stronghold. It's where Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are raised behind iron gates and carefully managed appearances. The idea of reintroducing Harry into that bubble, even briefly, was reportedly seen as a threat to that hard-won privacy. Kate, especially, was said to be adamant. She didn't want the energy of that situation entering her household, said a well-placed source. For her, this wasn't about holding a grudge. It was about emotional safety for her husband, and most importantly, for their children. There was also the elephant in the room, Meghan. While Harry may have requested to stay alone, there was no guarantee that Meghan wouldn't make an appearance, whether in person or through her influence. And for Kate, the prospect of Meghan being anywhere near her family, even peripherally, was too much to bear. The wounds were too deep, the trust too eroded. That's why even Nottingham Cottage, now vacant and symbolic of Harry's former place in the royal fold, was off limits. A place once filled with laughter and new beginnings had become a ghost of what was lost. Imagine Harry standing on the other side of that decision. To be denied access to the only place in London that ever truly felt like home. To be told, without theatrics or apology, that there was no room for him at the palace he once shared with his brother. Not just no room, but no desire. The emotional weight of that moment can't be overstated. This wasn't about where he would sleep. It was about what he represented. To be rejected from Kensington meant more than being without a bed. It meant being without a place in the family narrative. A public signal that he no longer fits in. Those close to Harry said he was stunned. Not angry, at least not initially, just stunned. Perhaps he believed his gesture would be received as a sign of good faith. Perhaps he thought the royal machine would overlook past offenses for the sake of unity. But he underestimated just how much had changed. Just how firmly William and Kate had redrawn the lines. And in a cruel twist of irony, the very royal event Harry wanted to attend, Trooping the Color, is itself a celebration of inclusion. A parade of pageantry that brings the family together in public display. But behind those ceremonial smiles and balcony waves lies a reality more fractured than ever. Sources say Harry made alternative arrangements quietly, avoiding any escalation. But the rejection, though not broadcast, was noted in high circles and leaked within hours. By then, the narrative had taken root. Harry tried to come back, and his family shut the door. The public reaction was swift and divided. Some saw it as a necessary boundary. Finally, the royals were saying enough is enough. Others viewed it as cold, cruel, and unroyal. After all, this was still a son, still a brother, still part of the bloodline. Shouldn't family come before pride? But for those inside the royal orbit, the answer is more complicated. This wasn't about punishment. It was about preservation. Kensington Palace has become a sanctuary not just from the media, but from betrayal. And Harry, no matter how noble his intentions, is now considered a risk. One source close to the royal household put it plainly: forgiveness doesn't always mean access. Sometimes healing means keeping the doors shut. That sentiment may seem harsh to outsiders, but within the palatial world of tradition, legacy, and image control, it resonates. The monarchy doesn't run on sentiment, it runs on structure. And Harry, willingly or not, stepped outside of that structure when he traded tradition for freedom. Now, he faces the consequences. Quietly. Alone. With the knowledge that the very palace that shaped him now stands as a monument to what he's lost. It's not a scandal. It's not a public feud. It's something far more devastating. It's the sound of a door closing, and the echo it leaves behind. For years, Prince William remained publicly composed while standing at the eye of a storm. The media frenzy that followed Harry and Meghan's departure from royal duties, the fallout from interviews and exposés, and the deeply personal memoir that shattered the illusion of fraternal unity, William bore it all in silence. But beneath that restraint, a quiet resolve was forming. And now, with the refusal to accommodate Harry at Kensington Palace, William has finally made that line visible. A line drawn not in anger, but in clarity. A royal wall of protection against chaos he no longer feels obligated to tolerate. Inside royal circles, there's no confusion about who made the final decision. While both William and Kate are said to have agreed on the rejection, it was William who framed it in broader terms, not as a personal vendetta, but as an issue of institutional stability. As the heir to the throne, William isn't merely a family member. He is the future of the monarchy. Every decision he makes is weighed against that responsibility. And allowing Harry to re-enter Kensington, even briefly, was seen as a step too far into volatility. A senior palace aide reportedly summarized William's stance in a single sentence: "We can't afford another distraction, not this week, not ever again." William understands the cost of scandal. He watched it consume his mother. He endured it during his parents' marriage breakdown. He saw how headlines could eclipse duty and how a single poorly timed photo or quote could hijack an entire royal calendar. That history now informs every move he makes. To outsiders, rejecting his own brother may appear cruel, even petty. But for William, it was a matter of precedent. Every time Harry has returned to the UK in recent years, the result has been the same: media uproar, diverted attention, and narratives spun beyond the palace's control. From the Oprah revelations to the funeral tension, to memoirs packed with private moments, each trip back has been less about reconciliation and more about reopening wounds. The key issue for William, insiders say, is trust, or rather, the lack of it. He no longer believes that what happens behind closed doors with Harry stays there, and he's tired of the consequences. According to those close to him, William is weary of feeling like every interaction with his brother is a potential headline, every private conversation a possible plot point in the next media spectacle. That weariness has hardened into policy. No more impromptu meetings. No more unsupervised time together. And, crucially, no more accommodation within royal grounds. It's not an emotional decision. It's a security one: emotional, political, and reputational security. William's concern isn't rooted in fear of Harry himself, but in what follows him. Paparazzi, speculation, tabloid leaks, and the possibility, however remote, that Meghan could be involved in some unseen way. William doesn't just see his brother walking through palace halls. He sees cameras, producers, and scandal chasing close behind. There's also the strategic aspect. William has carefully shaped his public image over the years. With Kate at his side, they have presented a unified, stable, forward-thinking version of royalty. Every public appearance, every speech, every carefully planned family photo contributes to that image. The arrival of Harry, with all his unresolved drama, threatens that equilibrium. One former royal staffer explained it this way: William isn't angry. He's focused. He sees what's at stake. He doesn't have the luxury of nostalgia anymore. Behind the scenes, William has also grown increasingly aware of the scrutiny he faces as future king. Every decision he makes, especially those involving family, is dissected. Appearing to tolerate instability could weaken public trust. He knows that, and so does his communications team, which is why even a seemingly small issue like granting Harry a place to stay becomes a strategic calculation. And then there's the emotional layer, less discussed, but very present. Despite the cool exterior, William has not escaped the damage of his brother's choices. He read the book. He watched the interviews. He's seen their private moments turn into global talking points. And though he hasn't lashed out publicly, those closest to him say the betrayal runs deep. In one of the most explosive parts of Harry's memoir, a physical altercation is described between the two brothers. Whether exaggerated or not, the fact that such an account was made public devastated William. Not because of the act itself, but because of what it revealed, that Harry no longer respected the sacred code of silence between them. That was, by all accounts, the turning point. Not one single fight, not one interview, but the accumulation of betrayal. So, when Harry came asking for access to Kensington, William didn't see it as a harmless request. He saw it as an invitation to revisit a dynamic he no longer has any interest in entertaining. There's also a critical difference in how William and Harry now view the role of family in public life. For Harry, sharing personal truth has become a form of activism, a way to reclaim his narrative. For William, discretion remains a principle. To William, family is sacred because it is private. And that privacy, he believes, has been violated again and again. Which is why, when confronted with Harry's request, William saw only one path forward. He declined. Not harshly, not with spite, just with resolve. And what's more telling than the decision itself is what followed. Nothing. No apology. No further explanation. No effort to smooth things over. The refusal stood on its own. A message not just for Harry, but for the world. The royal family is moving on, with or without him. The palace didn't issue a statement. They didn't leak a counter-narrative to soften the blow. They let the silence speak. And in that silence, a new chapter was etched. For William, this wasn't about Harry as a brother. It was about Harry as a brand. And that brand, in William's eyes, had become incompatible with the institution he's sworn to protect. His decision to draw that line marks a critical shift in the royal family's internal structure. It's not just the Queen who held authority anymore. With her passing, William has assumed a new kind of power, not official yet, but unmistakably influential. And with that power comes the responsibility of knowing when to close doors to protect the crown. For Harry, it's another loss. For William, it's another step in redefining what royalty means in the 21st century. No more drama. No more open invitations. No more rehashing of the past. The message is clear. The gates of Kensington are no longer revolving. They're closed, locked, and guarded. Not just by men in uniform, but by a prince who is no longer willing to risk it all in the name of nostalgia. The silence of the Princess of Wales has long been her armor. Grace under pressure, composed in every setting, the model of regal restraint. Yet, within the ornate walls of Kensington Palace, far away from the flash of cameras and the polite applause of royal engagements, there is a deeply private story unfolding, one centered not on titles or tradition, but on fear. Not the kind of fear that stems from physical harm, but a quieter, more insidious kind. Emotional fear. Psychological unease. The fear of being manipulated, misrepresented, or dragged once more into a public narrative over which she has no control. For Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge turned Princess of Wales, Meghan Markle's presence is not just a problem, it is a source of trauma. And the thought of that presence, even remotely connected to her private space or family sanctuary, is enough to draw an unmistakable line. According to insiders, Kate did not merely support the rejection of Prince Harry's request to stay at Kensington, she demanded it. To understand why, one must go back. Not to Meghan's wedding, not even to Harry's departure, but to the quiet beginnings of their royal intersections. When Meghan first entered the royal scene, there was hope. Kate, Ever the dutiful royal wife, extended courtesy and welcome. There were joint engagements, smiling photos, even shared stories about how the two women texted back and forth about fashion and wedding plans. But all of it fell apart in a moment now infamous in royal history, the pre-wedding row that ended in tears. The world was told it was Kate who made Meghan cry. But then came the Oprah interview. A single line flipped the narrative. Actually, Meghan said with clinical calm, "She made me cry." That statement, simple yet explosive, shattered years of carefully preserved silence. And it did more than just reverse public perception. It wounded Kate on a level she rarely reveals. Sources close to the royal household said that Kate was devastated not just by the accusation, but by the fact that a private disagreement had been aired publicly, and in a way that portrayed her as cruel. Those who know her well insist she immediately sent flowers and an apology at the time of the incident, a gesture that, in her world, closed the matter. But Meghan didn't just reopen the wound, she weaponized it. And from that moment, the trust between the two women was broken, perhaps forever. It wasn't just that Meghan spoke out. It was that she reshaped events to suit a narrative. And for someone like Kate, whose entire public identity hinges on poise, loyalty, and unspoken dignity, this was a betrayal that left lasting scars. From that point on, Meghan was no longer just a sister-in-law. She was a threat, unpredictable, theatrical, and perpetually surrounded by media chaos. It is within that emotional context that Kate's stance on Harry's request must be understood. When Harry asks to stay at Kensington, it is not just Harry she sees walking in. It's Meghan's influence, her orbit, her history, her voice, so often cloaked in victimhood, ready to twist moments into ammunition. And Kate, still recovering from past slights and quietly navigating life under intense public pressure, has decided that she simply will not allow it anymore. There is a deep-seated fear that another interaction, another photo, another overheard comment could become yet another viral scandal. Meghan has shown that private family moments are not sacred to her. They're material, content, dialogue for interviews and future projects. The Oprah sit-down, the Netflix documentary, even Harry's memoir. All are seen by the Wales household as proof that nothing is safe, nothing is respected, nothing is truly private. Kate, who has fought to maintain a stable, drama-free household for her children, is unwilling to expose them to that kind of volatility again. Her stance is not rooted in hatred or jealousy, as tabloids might suggest, but in protection, self-preservation, emotional boundaries. Those around her say she still feels haunted by what came before. The moment she became a meme after the Oprah interview, the messages from strangers calling her cruel, the way her years of quiet dedication were briefly overshadowed by one disputed anecdote. The fear isn't that Meghan will physically appear at Kensington unannounced. It's that her presence will seep in indirectly, through leaked stories, speculative coverage, or even just the looming suspicion that anything said or done within earshot of Harry could become part of the next chapter in their truth. Insiders say Kate has grown far more protective of her emotional space since the Sussex saga began. While she still performs her duties with elegance and warmth, behind the scenes, her boundaries have become sharper, tighter, especially when it comes to her family. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are her world. And anything that threatens their peace, whether it's gossip, media circus, or the return of old drama, is simply not welcome. There's also the matter of reputation. Kate has cultivated a specific image over the past decade: loyal, dutiful, gracious. It's not an accident, it's strategy, discipline, and relentless control. Meghan's sudden and dramatic entry into royal life challenged that image in ways that still reverberate today. Comparisons were made, narrative shifted, and in a short span of time, the story went from Kate the future queen to Kate versus Meghan, with the media and Meghan herself feeding the fire. Kate, according to friends, felt blindsided by how quickly she was cast as the establishment villain in Meghan's version of events. And what made it worse was that she couldn't respond, couldn't correct, couldn't defend herself without violating royal protocol. That silence, once her strength, became her cage. Now, years later, with the monarchy under even more scrutiny, Kate isn't willing to risk further damage. Not to her name, not to her children, and certainly not to her sense of control over the life she's built. Allowing Harry back into Kensington, even without Meghan, would bring with it the risk of surveillance, of being watched, recorded, interpreted. Every glance, every word, Every hallway encounter could become material for the next revelation. And Kate, deeply private by nature, has had enough of walking on eggshells in her own home. She has every reason to fear another round of headlines, another public opinion storm. Another source close to the couple claiming that Kate did or said something cruel or cold. And this time, she's refusing to give anyone that opportunity. There's also the issue of loyalty. Kate and William are not just spouses. They are a united front, a team. And while William's concerns may be institutional, Kate's are personal. But they reinforce one another. By saying no to Harry's request, they are presenting a united stance. The days of leniency are over. The days of granting access in the name of diplomacy are done. What matters now is preserving what they've built, and that starts with protecting Kensington from becoming a battleground again. For many royal watchers, this moment marks a significant shift in Kate's evolution. No longer just the smiling consort behind her husband, she is now a strategic power in her own right. Her voice, though rarely heard publicly, carries weight within the palace. And in this case, that voice said no. Not just to Harry, but to everything he brings with him. Some may interpret it as cold, others as courageous. But within the gilded walls of the palace, where every decision is a calculation, it is seen as necessary. Kate Middleton's fear of Meghan Markle is not theatrical. It is real, earned through years of betrayal, media madness, and emotional bruising. It is the fear of being used, of being painted again as the heartless royal, of seeing her family's name dragged back into the storm she's worked so hard to escape. That fear now governs her choices. And it has made one thing unmistakably clear: Kensington Palace is not a place for reliving the past. It is a place for protecting the future. And in that future, there is no space for Meghan's influence, real or perceived. Not even through Harry. Long after physically departing the United Kingdom, Meghan Markle's presence continues to reverberate through the walls of the British monarchy like an unresolved echo. Though her name may not appear in public palace statements, and though her image no longer graces the front steps of official engagements, within the private corridors of royal power, she remains a looming figure, one whose influence over Prince Harry, intentional or not, continues to stir anxiety, caution, and outright rejection. The question that now persists among insiders, royal watchers, and even sympathetic observers is this: how much of Harry's actions today are still shaped by Meghan's voice, her priorities, and her worldview? For many within the palace, the answer is not just a lot, it's almost entirely. According to sources within royal circles, there's a growing belief that even when Meghan is absent from the room, her intentions guide Harry's movements. Whether it's a request to stay at a royal residence, a decision to participate or withdraw from a public event, or a response to palace tensions, insiders claim Harry rarely makes these calls alone. And that, perhaps more than anything else, is what continues to unsettle William, Kate, and other senior royals. It's not about Meghan showing up to Kensington Palace unannounced with a camera crew. That's not the fear. It's about the sense that every action Harry takes could be, even subtly, a strategic move orchestrated in collaboration with Meghan. A chess piece that fits into a longer game being played far from British soil. Consider the timing of Harry's request to stay at Kensington Palace. On the surface, it seemed innocuous, perhaps even noble. A gesture of respect toward his father, a symbolic return to royal tradition, and a chance to mend old wounds. But palace sources quickly grew skeptical. Why now? Why this particular event? Why ask to stay within the most emotionally loaded and strategically sensitive royal residence, Kensington, the home base of William and Kate? The suspicion wasn't that Harry simply wanted proximity to Trooping the Color. It was that the move had a hidden purpose. Some speculated that Meghan had encouraged it as a way to test the royal waters again, to see whether doors could still be opened, or at the very least, to gauge just how firmly they were shut. Others took it further, theorizing that a media opportunity may have been on the horizon. Not an obvious one, not a camera crew waiting behind the hedges, but something more subtle. A quiet moment captured and spun into narrative. A recollection for a future memoir. A symbolic return framed later in interviews as a moment of healing, even if it didn't feel like that to anyone else involved. This pattern, of turning private moments into public statements, has become the hallmark of Harry and Meghan's post-royal brand. And it's why the idea of Harry staying at Kensington felt to William and Kate less like a simple family visit and more like the beginning of another public chapter. One they didn't want written. At the heart of this concern is a bitter truth. trust is gone. Not eroded, not strained, gone. Every royal interaction involving Harry is now filtered through the question, will this become content? Will it appear in a podcast? A Netflix project? A series of curated leaks to the media from unnamed friends? Even the smallest gesture, a handshake, a brief conversation, has the potential to be reinterpreted for a global audience months later in ways that serve the Sussexes' narrative. And for Meghan, shaping that narrative has become not just an exercise in image control, but a core strategy. As one Hollywood producer noted anonymously, Meghan understands the power of the story. She's not just living her life, she's framing it. That framing has led many to believe she still holds considerable sway over Harry's choices. Former staffers have pointed out that prior to Meghan, Harry had a complicated but functional relationship with his family. He chafed at duty, yes, but he still engaged with it. He understood the difference between personal frustration and public service. Since Meghan's arrival, however, that separation has disappeared. Now, every royal engagement, or lack thereof, is viewed through the lens of emotional fallout and moral messaging. Those close to William argue that Harry used to compartmentalize. Now he externalizes. What once would have been quiet disagreements have become global events. And though Harry may be the one speaking, Meghan is widely believed to be influencing the script. Their joint projects lend weight to this theory. From their explosive Oprah interview to the documentary series Harry and Meghan on Netflix, the couple has demonstrated a shared willingness to lift the veil on palace life. But what's become increasingly evident is that the storytelling often centers Meghan's perspective, her pain, her alienation, her critiques of royal life. And Harry's role, as one insider put it, is to reinforce and support that lens. This is where the question of influence becomes unavoidable. If Harry is still operating within Meghan's emotional architecture, if every return to the UK must be weighed against her past pain, her perceived betrayals, and her ambitions, then there's no such thing as a solo decision. And that makes him, in the eyes of the palace, unreliable. Even Meghan's public silence has raised eyebrows. Though she no longer addresses the British press directly and has pulled back from speaking on royal issues overtly, her absence itself is viewed as strategic. She doesn't need to say anything, one palace observer remarked. She lets Harry do it for her. This silence has created a ghostly tension. Meghan remains a player in royal affairs even when she's not physically present. And it's not just about Harry. It's about the brand they've built together. A brand that profits, in part, from the tension between inclusion and rejection. This dynamic has made Meghan a figure of fascination and caution within royal circles. She is not simply a former duchess. She is a cultural force with international clout, media savvy, and a global platform. That makes her powerful, but also, in the eyes of Kensington, dangerous. One aide confided anonymously, "It's not that we think Meghan is plotting some elaborate scheme. It's that we've learned, repeatedly, that our kindness can be repackaged as cruelty, that our privacy can be mined for content, that a simple meeting can become a narrative turning point, shaped for cameras we never saw." And that's why, when Harry asked to stay, even alone, the answer had to be no. Because in this new era, Harry is no longer viewed as independent from Meghan. Not emotionally, not strategically, not narratively. Every move is part of a larger arc. Every interaction is potential footage. Every pause in the conflict is potentially a setup for Act 2. This view is not paranoia, it's born from experience. From years of watching private conversations appear in public monologues. From seeing holiday invitations followed by accusations. From watching the monarchy try to defend itself in a digital era where the Sussexes wield far more agility, charisma, and emotional persuasion than the crown ever could. Meghan's influence, then, is not just over Harry. It's over perception, over the way the world views the monarchy, and over how the monarchy must now view itself. She has shifted the terrain entirely, and the palace has not fully adapted. They are still playing chess. She plays the algorithm. And that's what makes her so concerning to those who crave control. The monarchy thrives on timing, silence, and continuity. Meghan operates in disruption, virality, and change. So long as Harry remains bound to her worldview, and so long as the monarchy remains suspicious of it, he will never again be seen as neutral ground. His presence, no matter how benign his intentions, will always be calculated as a potential risk. That is the enduring shadow Meghan casts. Not with malice, necessarily. Not even with direct action. But with the knowledge that her influence still lives inside the very prince who once called Kensington home. In a world governed by protocol, timing, and meticulous control of public image, few things strike fear into the heart of the royal establishment more than unpredictability. For decades, the British monarchy has thrived by mastering silence, staying above the fray, and curating its appearances down to the last detail. Every gesture is deliberate. Every speech measured. Every photograph a message. And this is precisely why the idea of Prince Harry, and, by extension, Meghan Markle, re-entering the picture, even briefly, sends shudders through royal staff and senior members alike. The concerns aren't theoretical. They're based on a pattern. A track record of media flare-ups, unexpected disclosures, and carefully orchestrated moments that catch the palace off guard and spin out of their control. What palace insiders fear isn't just chaos, it's calculated chaos. The kind that turns private interactions into public firestorms. The kind that shifts focus away from royal duty and redirects it to drama. This is where the idea of staged moments comes in. Within royal circles, this term has become a quiet shorthand for instances when Sussex-related events appear spontaneous but are later revealed to be tightly choreographed. Whether it's an accidental paparazzi photo in Los Angeles or an emotional anecdote resurfacing during a high-profile interview, the palace has learned to see these moments not as harmless PR, but as potential ambushes. The pain of such moments is still fresh. Take, for example, the aftermath of Prince Philip's funeral in 2021. While the world focused on the solemnity of the occasion, behind the scenes, a more fragile and complex reality was unfolding. That was one of the last times Harry and William were seen walking together, side by side, in the public eye. The image was instantly hailed as a sign of reconciliation. But within days, reports began to emerge that the apparent harmony was short-lived and that private conversations during that visit had been leaked or reinterpreted in later Sussex-friendly media coverage. For the palace, that marked a turning point. What appeared to be healing was, in their view, weaponized. And the risk was clear, even the most sacred events. Funerals, memorials, royal tributes could be reframed in a documentary months later. The release of the Sussex's Netflix docuseries only compounded the concern. Footage, voiceovers, and behind-the-scenes commentary exposed what many at the palace believed were confidential, off-limits moments. A quiet look across a courtyard. A photo taken behind the scenes. Snippets of royal life that most assumed would remain private were suddenly available to millions, re-edited, recontextualized, and redistributed across social platforms. That's why, when Harry requested to stay at Kensington Palace, royal aides didn't just see a logistical challenge. They saw a vulnerability, a risk vector, an opening for yet another unexpected narrative to bloom. Security was, of course, part of the equation. Anytime a high-profile royal returns, especially one like Harry who is no longer afforded the same level of taxpayer-funded protection, the logistics are enormous. Who covers the costs? Who manages his movements? How do you keep photographers at bay when the media already smells blood? But beyond the physical safety issues lies something even more sensitive, reputational security. That is, the safeguarding of the monarchy's image, continuity, and messaging. Allowing Harry to stay within palace grounds would have signaled a thaw, an olive branch. And if such a gesture were later spun into content, either explicitly in media or implicitly in future interviews, the palace would once again look naive, reactive, and incapable of managing its own narrative. One senior staffer put it plainly, "We can protect a building. We can protect a person. What we can't protect is perception once it escapes the gates." There's also the media factor. Every royal journalist in the UK and abroad would seize on Harry's return to Kensington. Rumors would swirl about secret meetings, hidden talks, or reconciliation behind closed doors. And if Meghan appeared, even from afar, it would explode into a narrative tsunami. Paparazzi would swarm. Social media would ignite. The monarchy's carefully orchestrated trooping the color would be sidelined by speculation. That's not hyperbole, it's precedent. Time and again, Sussex appearances have eclipsed royal events. Whether intentional or coincidental, the result is always the same. Attention shifts, headlines change, and the monarchy loses control of the storyline. This fear of being outmaneuvered in the court of public opinion is not unfounded. Meghan and Harry's team, whether formal or informal, has proven remarkably adept at narrative management. They know when to stay quiet, when to release a statement, when to let a rumor linger, and when to speak directly. The palace, on the other hand, still operates with glacial slowness, bound by tradition, protocol, and layers of sign-off. In such an imbalance, even a single misstep can be disastrous. A leaked schedule, a misplaced comment, a missed signal. All of it could fuel speculation, divide public opinion, and reignite tensions just as they begin to settle. This is why the phrase staged moment has become so politically charged inside palace walls. It doesn't necessarily imply deceit. It implies control, the kind the monarchy no longer has when Harry and Meghan are involved. Royal aides now operate under a simple rule: assume everything can become public. Assume every conversation, every smile, every glance could be reframed through a different lens. Not because they believe Harry is malicious, but because they've seen how his world operates now. It's a world of docuseries, memoirs, podcasts, public statements, and silent cameras that may not flash but are always recording. For the future king and queen, that's an unacceptable vulnerability. And for the monarchy, it's a line that can no longer be crossed. Amid the noise, the leaks, and the very public crumbling of royal unity, there has been one figure who has remained notably quiet: King Charles III, the man whose very coronation was shadowed by the ongoing tension between his sons. The monarch who has spent a lifetime preparing for a throne that now feels surrounded by emotional landmines. He says nothing. He does nothing, at least not visibly. And in that silence, a new question begins to rise. Where does King Charles truly stand? It would be easy to assume that Charles has taken sides, that by allowing William and Kate to block Harry's request to stay at Kensington, he tacitly endorsed their judgment. But the truth, as with most matters of the crown, is far more complex. Those who know Charles well say he is a man deeply conflicted, torn between his duty as king and his longing to keep his family intact. He is a man who, despite his measured public appearances and carefully worded statements, has a highly emotional core. That core has always been especially sensitive when it comes to his children. He was never the warmest father, nor the most attentive. During Harry's younger years, Charles was often consumed by the demands of royal life and the mounting complications of his strained relationship with Princess Diana. After her death, his relationship with both sons shifted dramatically. With William, the bond grew in responsibility. With Harry, it became more fragile, defined less by obligation and more by a shared loss. So when Harry left the royal family and began his public criticism of the institution, it wasn't just an attack on protocol. It was a deeply personal wound for Charles. And yet, he chose not to retaliate. He did not strip Harry of his titles. He did not publicly condemn his interviews. He did not deny him access to the coronation. Instead, he kept the door slightly ajar, just wide enough for reconciliation, should it ever be sought. But keeping the door open is not the same as inviting someone through it. And in the case of Harry's recent request to stay at Kensington Palace, Charles's silence spoke volumes. Multiple royal correspondents have noted that Charles did not intervene. He did not push William and Kate to accommodate his youngest son. He did not propose alternative arrangements within the royal estate. And most critically, he did not make a public gesture to show Harry was welcome. Some say this was political calculation. Others say it was emotional exhaustion. Charles, after all, has a kingdom to lead, a monarchy to stabilize, public opinion to win. And his personal life, already riddled with scars, cannot be allowed to dominate the reign he waited decades to begin. In that context, Harry's return, even for a ceremonial event like Trooping the Color, was seen not as a moment of unity, but a complication. Still, it's worth asking, does Charles truly agree with the hard line drawn by William and Kate? Or did he simply accept it to preserve peace? Insiders suggest Charles is increasingly deferential to William on matters of family logistics. As the heir and the public face of the younger generation of royals, William wields significant influence over how the family is perceived and managed. Charles respects that influence, and in many ways, he's relieved to share the burden. But that doesn't mean Charles is indifferent. Behind the scenes, there have been reports of private calls, handwritten notes, and quiet gestures from Charles to Harry. He has reportedly expressed a desire for reconciliation, a hope that one day things might return to some semblance of normalcy. But these gestures have been sporadic, inconsistent, and ultimately ineffective. The king is in a bind. If he appears to favor Harry, he alienates William, the son who remained, who shouldered the crown's burdens, and who now leads the public narrative with his wife. If he sides too clearly with William, he risks losing Harry forever, and with him, any hope of repairing their personal relationship. And so, Charles waits, watches, hopes. But hope, in this case, may not be enough. His silence, while politically safe, has emotional consequences. For Harry, the lack of support is